if you see, sometimes there might be some squirrels and birds behind us. There's bird feeders and stuff, and
being musicians, everyone says, oh, it's your dream to tour, right? But sometimes touring doesn't always go well, as happened to Adolf in Philadelphia.
Let me tell you a story about Philadelphia. So there was one time we were driving. Where were we driving from?
We were driving from Cleveland to Philadelphia.
We went from Cleveland to Philadelphia, which, if I remember correctly, is like 8-ish hours. We typically take turns driving, and it was my turn to close out the drive. And so I drove for probably like 2 or 3 hours, but at this point I was just pretty zoned out because we'd been driving for a really long time. And it was late at night, and I remember I was getting off the highway and driving a 15-passenger van where it's full of equipment and you can't really see anything in a 15-passenger van, and we're just exhausted. So I'm driving and I'm pulling off the highway and I accidentally cut somebody off. And it wasn't like a bad cut off, like I definitely wasn't gonna hit him, but it was pretty rude. My mistake. I fully accept that. However, what happens next?
Well, what made it really, really rude is that you cut him off and then swerved and cut him off again.
I did on accident because I was like, oh no, there's a guy there. So then I swerved and accidentally cut him off again, but didn't hit him. In Cincinnati, maybe he would have flipped me off or something and move on. But no, we're in Philadelphia. So this dude pulls. So we get off the highway. This dude pulls right up next to me, and he's just like looking at me, like staring me down. And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, yes, I was in the wrong. Sorry.
He starts like banging on his car and yelling at you.
Right,
too.
and I'm like, oh man. I'm like looking at him. I'm like, dude, sorry, my bad, whatever. Then he whips in front of our van and like brake checks us. And we've got like a ton of weight in the back seat, or in the back. All the back seats are taken out because it's just full of equipment. So I like slammed on the brakes and thankfully didn't hit him. And then he brake checked me like 1 or 2 more times, and I'm like, okay, this dude's kind of being a jerk, but we're just gonna try and play it cool and hopefully he'll get over it. Well, then we pull up. So then we're following him for a little bit, and we hit a red light, and he gets out of his car. And he comes to the side of our door, where I am, and he tries to start getting in the van, and he's banging on the window and the door.
And so
scary.
Adolf is really a very nice person, so he's like flustered.
I'm like, so what do I do?
He rolls down the window a little bit, and
much.
He's like trying to say, "I'm sorry,
I'm
sir."
like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what you want me to do.
And what we learned, that's not what you say in Philadelphia.
That's not what you say in Philadelphia. So he starts.
He spit in.
Tried to spit in the window and punch in the window and stuff, and so then the light turns green. So I start. Oh, and his girlfriend was out of the car yelling at him. Yeah. It was a whole thing. So then I like pull out and just start driving away because I'm like, I'm not trying to get in a fight.
I'm like, Adolf, drive.
I'm like, here we go. And if you've never been to Philadelphia, the streets are like this tight. And it's the kind of thing where I've never seen this before, but the cars are parked, like half of them are in the street and the other half of the car is like on the curb or almost on the sidewalk just because there's not a lot of room. And so there's cars parked on both sides, like half on the sidewalk, half in the street. And you're just squeezing down this tiny thing. And I'm trying not to hit all these cars that are parked as this dude follows us for the next, like, probably, like, 2 or 3 miles.
Yeah, and then we start hearing, like, thud on the back of our car.
I'm like,
he's
what the
literally
heck?
Leaning out the window, throwing beer bottles at our van.
It was insane.
And, and then we got to where we were going. Our friend was hosting us.
Well, so then I just kept driving to try and, like, I'm like, I'm not about to drive to this house. Like, finally.
So then we told our friend that whole story, and he just goes, "That's Philly, baby."
That's Philly, baby.
That's Philly, baby. So that's like one of our new like catchphrases. That's Philly, baby.
So if something like weird happens, we're like, oh, it's Philly, baby.
Yeah. So moral of the story: if you go to Philadelphia, you're supposed to also not be nice, and if you accidentally cut somebody off, just be really mean to them. And we have another fun story called Telehope at Applefest. What could go wrong at Applefest?
That's what we thought.
That's what we thought. Oh, man. So, one time, we played Applefest. Well, we tried to play Applefest. So, when we tour, we have a lot of equipment. We have our own mics, and we have our own sound guy and all that stuff. So they don't have to provide anything. So, the event coordinator did not like that. We pulled up, we unloaded all of our stuff, and she's like, wait, this wasn't in the contract. Like, you can't use all this stuff.
Let me pause for a second. The contract she had emailed to us, and she had already signed our names, which should have been the first red flag. But for some reason, we let it slide.
It was only for $250.
So we were like,
years ago.
We'll let this slide. This was many years ago.
But we got the contract. It said Telehope in Times New Roman font under signature, and I was like, I didn't do that.
At least it wasn't Comic Sans. So
that is very true. So anyway, we get there and she's like, yeah, I don't like this, and I was like, okay. And then she said,
we had talked to the sound guy there, and the people actually like in charge of running the event musically, like the stage hands and all of them were totally cool with what we were doing, and we were all on the same page. But the lady who was in charge of the event was not so happy.
She was not happy at all. She screamed at me and said, she said, you have to play an hour and a half earlier or else you can leave right now. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. I was like, that's not in the contract. She's like, I can rip up the contract. I'm like...
We had like a ton of fans coming later, so we're like, they're going to show up and we're not going to be here to play.
But she didn't care. She's like, you play right now or else you don't get to play. So we're like, okay, fine, we'll play. What the heck? So we get 2.5 songs into our performance. The power goes out. And we're like, okay, whatever. That happens sometimes.
And immediately she comes running up going, don't worry. I did not shut off the power. I did not turn off the power. Please get off the stage.
She literally said that, and we're like, that's not suspicious. And so right after that, we started packing up. Power magically came back on.
Somehow.
So, when we went on to play the show, so backstory, we were actually all homeschooled back in the day. So, we made the mistake of telling her that before the show. And so she's like, I'm going to introduce you guys. I'm like, okay, here's the mic. So she says... Up next is the band Telehope. They brought all of their own equipment, which was wonderful, and they were all homeschooled, so they didn't have to spend time hitting the books. She literally said that.
Which is not true at all.
Not true. So we're like, okay, this is really happening. We thought we were getting punked or something.
It was crazy. I'm like, where are the hidden cameras?
Yeah, for real.
So yeah, we ended up... Our set got cut, all of our fans showed up, and we did not perform. No. So we ended up just giving them all tickets to a free show in the future. And now we know, don't go to a show where your contract has already been signed.
Exactly.
But it's funny, I think everybody looks at touring through rose-colored glasses, like until they actually get to go. For example...
We popped 8 tires in the span of like 6 months. U-Haul tires.
To the point where, like, if you pop a U-Haul tire, you have to call, like, their tire people, and then they show up, like, many hours later. And then there was one time in particular where they were like, oh, well, it's because you have way too much equipment in the trailer. And we're like, we totally don't. Like, we're really careful about that. Yeah. So then they made us, like, they put the trailer that we were renting on a bigger trailer and then took it to, like, a weigh station. Yeah. And we were under the weight limit. Like, we were totally fine. But it was... It was insane. So, if you're touring, be careful because you might pop 8 tires.
Well, the moral of the story, if you get a U-Haul trailer, whatever, always get the $10 insurance because it will save your butt. Mm-hmm. It saved our butt, and it can save yours.
You know, over our quarantine over the summer, we rehearsed in this area that was like kind of in the wilderness almost. It was like half a mile back into the woods. And so we ran into a lot of animals there. So over quarantine...
But we had a house.
Right. So it's in a house. So we're not just rehearsing out in the woods or something like that.
The house was falling apart, and they had plans to tear it down. Yeah. But they had built on, like, a living room to the house. So we kind of boarded up the rest of the house and just rehearsed in the living room.
Oh, right. The rehearsal space literally had a hole going straight from the roof through the second floor, through the first floor.
Hopefully there's a picture. We'll
into the kitchen.
We can put a picture.
But needless to say, this house was not in a good condition, but we're grateful for it. It was awesome. But so we're outside one day, taking a break, and then we see this little tiny thing, probably about the size of my iPhone, and we had no idea what it was. But then we, picked it up, and it turned out it was a woodchuck.
Yeah.
It was a woodchuck.
Baby woodchuck.
Baby woodchuck. It looked like it was
Picture.
maybe 2 days, 3 days old.
He had been abandoned by his mother.
His mom abandoned him. So we, being just the good stewards that we are, we decided we gotta feed this guy. But first we had to name him, so we named him Ralphie.
Ralphie.
And we actually wrote a song about him, but
We'll see if it makes the cut.
We'll see if it makes the cut on that.
I don't know.
But
yeah, so Ralphie was basically our mascot for that week, and he was a little cutie. And I think his mom rejected him because he was sick or something. So I went to PetSmart and got a little beaker and some puppy replacement milk, and I fed it to him. Maybe there's gonna be some video of that. I don't know, but it's really cute. He became our Telehope woodchuck.
Wildlife rescue people wouldn't take him because he's, I guess, just like a rodent.
sadly,
which was very sad. But we did a lot of research and took care of him.
We fed him. We tried to take care
days.
of him, but he died.
He did pass
we
away.
did hold a funeral service for him, so he did go out with some respect and dignity.
He did.
But he's not the only animal we took care of. There were also raccoons. There was a guy named Terry, I think.
Terry.
Who we caught. He was a
guy.
There's this guy we caught. But
raccoon.
He was also just a little baby raccoon. So raccoons are a little different than woodchucks though, because woodchucks, they're more subdued, they're more calm, but raccoons.
This guy was crazy.
He was like
so
that.
One thing, and the way we discovered that there were raccoons in the house, is we were recording, and there were raccoons that kept messing up our takes because they were scratching inside the walls.
Yes.
Which is really disgusting.
Gross.
But, so we'd be recording vocals or something, and you just hear and we're like, oh my gosh.
And then pair that up with the mice inside the walls as well, and so...
There were mice.
There were also mice.
So I set up a bunch of mouse traps. I was like, this has got to be mice in the walls. And we got 3, and they were really cute, actually. 3 or 4. But I thought we had gotten them all, and then we heard more noises.
It was so scary.
Then we brought out the raccoon trap.
And we found probably 5 raccoons upstairs. Remember?
Yeah, that's true.
I was so scared.
4.
There was one time where we thought a person has broken into this house.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So if you want to go back to
person
the live
walking.
stream on Instagram,
you can see
I want to say
happen.
it was
Yes.
July something.
It was terrifying.
It was May.
It was May. The live's about an hour long, but it is just jam packed with
Us being
eventful
terrified.
stuff. Yeah.
Just hearing people. We're there's somebody upstairs, and it was just 5 raccoons.
So
we had even more wildlife though. We had we would get there at 7 a.m. to rehearse, and there would be coyotes, baby coyotes around, and those are super cool. And there were ducks and crane, herons, and
geese. Oh yeah,
geese.
There's this group of ducks that hangs out in the creek right next to where we rehearse, and so I don't know what I'm referencing when I say this, but I call them the Mallard Go-Go's. I think there's a group name, a band name, something Go-Go's, but
Probably.
I hope I'm not infringing on anything.
We have one more story. We're actually friends and pretty tight with Olive Garden.
We are indeed.
Like this.
So, yeah. So, I'm talking Olive Garden, the breadsticks.
The Olive
Olive Garden.
So...
There was this one time where, I don't even remember how it happened, but for some reason, I think I was like, hey guys, we should write a jingle for Olive Garden.
Mm-hmm.
And...
Well, it was Twitter.
Did it start on Twitter?
Yeah, because we're like...
I tweeted something, and then they replied.
Yeah, they replied to us. Something about breadsticks.
I said something about breadsticks. I don't remember.
We'll find it. We'll put it in the picture right here.
And so then Olive Garden replied, and I was like, you know what, guys? We should write Olive Garden a jingle, because they don't have one.
Yeah.
Breadsticks. So we did. And
wait, here it is.
Wish I had an Olive Garden breadstick. I wish I had an Olive Garden breadstick. 'Cause they're so buttery, garlicky, fluffy in my mouth. They're so good. They're so good.
So there it is.
We posted that, and Olive Garden replied, and we formed an instant bond. And they eventually reached out and sent us merch and stickers and pins.
Right.
Handwritten letter.
A handwritten note.
Right. So that video that you just saw was on TikTok. So if you do want to get, or if you want more quality TikTok content, go follow us at Teleho Band on TikTok.